You want us to rent our own house from you? My sister gasped. It's business, you taught me well, I replied coldly. 3 years later, my dad finally admitted. I never thought a rundown parking lot would change my life. But that's how it happened, with cracked asphalt and weeds pushing through forgotten corners. My inheritance, my family's idea of a joke. I stood there that first day, keys dangling from my fingers. The rusty chain-link fence surrounding it swayed in the breeze, trash collected against the edges. Forgotten like me, my throat tightened, a familiar sensation whenever I thought about my family. I'd always been the afterthought, the second child, the disappointment, not like Olivia, my perfect sister, the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. She got the beach house. I got this. It has potential, my father had said, not meeting my eyes as he handed over the deed. His voice carried that tone, the one that said he was fulfilling an obligation, nothing more. My mother had been more direct. It's what we could afford to give you, Marcus, you understand. But I understood too well. This wasn't about money. This was about worth. In their eyes, this neglected patch of concrete matched what they thought of me. The sun beat down on my neck as I walked the perimeter. 32 steps long, 26 wide, not large but not small either. In downtown Portland, space was space. My heart raced with possibility, with anger, with determination. I kicked a stone, watching it skitter across the cracked surface. It wasn't the property that stung. It was the message behind it. Olivia had always been the star. Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect life. I'd been the one who struggled, who changed majors 3 times, who couldn't seem to find his place, but I'd found something better, resilience. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Olivia. I let it go to voicemail. I already knew what she'd say, some variation of pity wrapped in superiority. I breathed in the scent of the city, car exhaust, coffee from the shop across the street, possibility. That night I couldn't sleep. Ideas raced through my mind, fragments of plans forming and reforming, the parking lot transformed in my imagination, food trucks. The thought hit me at 3:42 a.m. Portland loved food trucks. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. The city had a thriving food scene, but space was limited. Good locations, even more so. By morning, I'd drafted a business plan. By the end of the week, I'd talked to the city about permits. By the end of the month, I'd scraped together enough from my savings to begin renovations. It wasn't easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. I worked my day job at the graphics design firm, then worked nights at the lot, clearing debris, patching asphalt, installing electric hookups and water lines. My hands bled, my back ached, but each pain felt like victory. Olivia called twice more. I finally answered the third time. "We're worried about you," she said. Her voice carried that familiar condescension, like she was speaking to a child. "Mom said you're doing something with that lot." "Building a business," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Her laugh cut deeper than she knew. "Oh, Marcus, always with the big dreams." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Someone has to have them." "Well, don't spend too much. You know how your projects usually turn out." I ended the call shortly after. Her words echoed as I worked harder, pushed further, proved myself to the only person who mattered, me. 3 months later, Lot 49 opened with 5 food trucks, a coffee vendor, a Thai food specialist, a vegan taco truck, a gourmet grilled cheese maker, and an artisanal ice cream shop. The grand opening exceeded my wildest expectations. Lines formed, social media buzzed, local food bloggers showed up. I stood in the center of it all, watching people enjoy the space I'd created. My chest swelled with something unfamiliar, pride, pure and unalloyed. My phone buzzed throughout the day. My parents, Olivia, I let them all go to voicemail. This day was mine. That night, exhausted but exhilarated, I finally listened to their messages. "Marcus, your mother and I saw something about your lot on Facebook. Call us." My father's voice, confused but curious. "So you actually did it? Huh, color me surprised, call me back." Olivia, trying to sound supportive but unable to hide her shock. My mother's message was shortest. "I hope you know what you're doing." I deleted them all without returning the calls. For once, I didn't need their approval. The success spoke for itself. The first month brought steady business. The second, even more. By the third, I'd added 2 more trucks and installed picnic tables. String lights crisscrossed overhead, giving the space a magical feel at night. The rental fees from the trucks covered my loan payments and then some. I'd created something from nothing, transformed a joke into a triumph. 6 months in, I received an unexpected visitor. Nice setup you've got. My father's voice cut through the lunchtime buzz. I turned slowly, steeling myself. He looked older, smaller somehow. His eyes swept across the busy lot, trying to calculate its worth. Thanks, my voice remained steady though my pulse quickened. Your mother and I were surprised. He shifted uncomfortably. We didn't think that I'd make something of it. The words escaped before I could filter them. He cleared his throat. It's not what we expected. I said nothing. Let the silence stretch between us, filled with the happy sounds of customers and the smell of cooking food. Your sister's having some troubles, he finally said. The beach house needs a new roof. Insurance won't cover it all. And there it was, the real reason for his visit. My laugh surprised both of us. Bitter, real. That's unfortunate. I kept my tone neutral. He looked at me expectantly, waiting for the offer of help that had always flowed the other direction in our family, from me to them, never reciprocated. Marcus, we're talking about $30,000. I met his gaze. I'm aware of roofing costs. So you'll help. The entitlement in his voice made my skin crawl. No, the word hung between us. Simple, final. His face reddened. After everything we've given you, my gesture encompassed the parking lot. You mean this, the property you gave me as a joke, while Olivia got oceanfront real estate? We never meant. You meant exactly what you gave. My voice remained calm despite the storm inside. And I'm grateful. This lot taught me something important. I don't need your approval anymore. He left without another word. The encounter left me shaking, but stronger. The calls increased after that. My mother, Olivia, friends of the family, all with the same message, repackaged in different words. Family helps family, don't be selfish. Remember who raised you. I let their guilt sink into me, then released it, like poison drawn from a wound. Lot 49 continued to thrive. I expanded, adding a covered area for rainy days, a small stage for weekend musicians. The property value tripled. Meanwhile, I heard whispers about my family's finances. My father's law firm struggling after losing major clients. My mother's medical bills piling up after a surprise diagnosis that required specialized treatment. Olivia's career hitting unexpected turbulence. Still, the foreclosure notice shocked me. Not that they were in trouble, the signs had been there for months. Dad's risky investments in tech startups that went nowhere. Mom's insistence on maintaining appearances despite dwindling resources. The credit card debt they'd hidden from everyone. The same day the news reached me, a real estate listing landed in my inbox. Their house, my childhood home, on the market for a fraction of its worth in a distressed sale. I sat at my desk staring at the listing photos. The familiar kitchen where I'd always felt like an intruder. The living room where achievements were measured and mine always found wanting. The perfect lawn my father made me mow every Saturday, then redid himself because my work wasn't up to standard. My finger hovered over the delete button, but another idea formed instead. Dangerous, satisfying. 3 weeks later, I sat across from them in a sterile bank conference room. My parents looked hollowed out, defeated. We don't understand, my mother said, voice small. Who bought the house? The banker looked at me expectantly. I did. The words fell between us like stones. Their expressions shifted from confusion to shock to something darker. You, my father's voice cracked. I slid the rental agreement across the table. I'm offering you a lease, market rate, 1-year term with option to renew. The silence stretched painfully. You want us to rent our own house from you? Olivia's voice dripped with disbelief. She'd moved back in with them after her own financial troubles started. Not your house anymore. I kept my voice matter of fact. Mine. This is cruel, my mother whispered. Was it? Maybe, but it felt like balance, like justice. It's business, I replied, the words they'd used against me countless times. You taught me well. They signed the lease. What choice did they have? The housing market had collapsed. Rentals were scarce. They needed time to regroup. I became their landlord. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Monthly rent checks arrived, each one a reminder of our reversed positions. I never cashed them. Instead, I put them in a separate account, for what I wasn't yet sure. Lot 49 expanded to a second location, then a third. Food truck culture boomed and I rode the wave, featured in local business magazines, approached by investors. My graphic design job became a distant memory. Success changed me, hardened some parts, softened others. I dated occasionally but kept people at a distance. Trust came slowly, if at all. Over the months, I noticed changes in Olivia, small at first. The way she stopped defending our parents when they complained about the rent. How she started asking questions about my business. actually listening to the answers. One afternoon, she visited Lot 49 alone, without announcement or pretense. "I wanted to see what you built," she said, standing awkwardly by the entrance. "Really see it." My guard stayed up. "Take a look around." She wandered the space, observing everything: the efficient layout, the diverse food options, the community tables filled with people. "They never gave you a chance," she said finally, her voice almost too quiet to hear above the crowd. "I never gave you one either." The admission caught me off guard, not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement. "Why now?" I asked. She looked away. "Living with them again, seeing how they talk about you despite your success. It made me realize some things." I said nothing, waited. "They were wrong about you," she continued. "Maybe they were wrong about me too." Her words hung in the air between us, not quite a bridge, but perhaps the foundation for one. One night, a pipe burst in my parents' house, my house. My father's call came at midnight. "We've got water everywhere," he said, voice tight with the effort of asking for help. I could have called a 24-hour plumber, sent someone else. Instead, I went myself. The front door opened to reveal my childhood home transformed. Family photos removed from walls. Furniture rearranged. The smell of my mother's cooking replaced by something unfamiliar. My father stood in the doorway, hair disheveled, looking every one of his 68 years. "It's the upstairs bathroom," he said, not meeting my eyes. I followed him up the familiar stairs, toolbox in hand. The bathroom was flooded, water seeping into the hallway carpet. We worked side by side, mostly silent. Him holding the flashlight, me fixing the broken connection, water soaking through our clothes. "You've done well for yourself," he said finally, his voice barely audible over the sound of my wrench on pipe. I said nothing. The silence stretched between us, taut with unspoken words. He cleared his throat, started to speak, stopped, his breathing uneven in the dim light. My hands paused their work. Water dripped onto my forearm, cold, insistent. He struggled, the words seeming to physically pain him. "We were," I waited, time suspended between heartbeats. "We were wrong about you." The admission finally came, forced through clenched teeth. His eyes fixed on the flooded floor, unable to meet mine, my chest tightened. A lifetime of seeking these words, now hearing them hollow and late. "I know," I replied. After the leak was fixed and the water mopped up, we sat at the kitchen table. Two strangers connected by blood and bitter history. "Why did you buy this house?" he asked finally, the question I'd been waiting for, the one I'd asked myself many times. "Because you never thought I could." He nodded slowly. "And the rent checks, we know you haven't cashed them. Consider it an investment." "In what?" I looked around the kitchen, at the space that held so many difficult memories. "In proving something to myself." He seemed to age before my eyes. "Not to punish us." "That too," I admitted, "at first." We sat in silence until the first light of dawn crept through the windows, not reconciled, not healed, but honest for the first time. 2 weeks later, I established a trust. The rent money, plus matching funds from me, designated for one purpose: a scholarship fund for overlooked kids, children with potential that others couldn't or wouldn't see. I named it after my grandfather, the only person who'd ever believed in me unconditionally, who'd taught me to fish when my father was too busy with Olivia's soccer tournaments, who'd slipped me $20 bills for college when no one was looking. The first recipient was a girl from East Portland, bright but overlooked, creative but underestimated. At the small award ceremony, I caught my parents watching from the back row, not invited by me. They must have seen the announcement in the local paper. Our eyes met briefly across the room, no words exchanged, none needed. Lot 49 became a Portland institution, featured in travel guides, a must-visit destination. What began as 5 food trucks grew to a mini empire across the city. And the parking lot my family gave me as a joke, valued at 30 times its original worth. The beach house, by comparison, had barely appreciated after years of storm damage and neglect. Olivia and I began meeting for coffee occasionally, tentative conversations that gradually grew more honest, more real. "I've been thinking a lot about fairness," she said during one such meeting, months after the pipe incident. "About what we each received, what we were expected to become." My guard remained partially up. Years of hurt don't dissolve easily. "And," I prompted, she traced the rim of her mug. "At first I thought I was the lucky one, the favorite." I waited, sensing more to come. "But watching you build something of your own, I realized I've never created anything." Her voice wavered slightly. Everything was given to me, along with expectations I never questioned. My breath caught, recognition bloomed, two sides of the same damaged coin. They trapped us both, I said quietly, just in different cages. She nodded, eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. I was jealous of you, she admitted, of your freedom. The confession landed heavily between us. What freedom? You had everything. Everything they wanted for me, she corrected. Never what I wanted for myself. For the first time, I truly saw my sister, not the golden child, not my rival, just another person struggling to define herself beyond our parents' narrow vision. 3 years after buying my parents' house, I invited them to dinner. Neutral territory, an upscale restaurant downtown. They arrived precisely on time, aged but dignified, cautious. We've been thinking, my father began after the appetizers arrived, about selling the beach house. I set down my fork, surprised. Olivia doesn't want it, my mother continued. It's too much upkeep for us now. I waited for them to reach their point. We thought you might want to buy it, my father said. Keep it in the family. The offer hung between us, an olive branch, a recognition of my success, perhaps even an apology. My heart trembling, the moment stretched impossibly long, every memory crashed against me. Fragments of what we were, what we could have been. No, my refusal was gentle but firm. I have everything I need. Their disappointment showed briefly, then understanding dawned. You never wanted our things, my mother said slowly. You wanted our belief. The truth of her words made my chest tighten. Yes. We failed you there, my father acknowledged. The admission cost him visibly. You did, I agreed, but I didn't fail myself. The rest of dinner passed in a strange new territory, not warm familiarity, not cold estrangement, something in between, something real. As we parted outside the restaurant, my father hesitated, then extended his hand. Not the embrace others might share, but a handshake between equals. I took it, feeling the strength still present in his aging grip. The connection brief but significant. Your lease is up next month, I reminded them. They nodded, uncertainty crossing their faces. I'm selling the house, I continued. To you, for what I paid, if you want it. Surprise, confusion, wariness. Why, my father asked. I looked between them, the people who had shaped me for better and worse, because I don't need it anymore. The truth was simple. The house, like their approval, had lost its power over me. I'd outgrown the need for either. They accepted. Papers were signed, keys exchanged, ownership transferred back to them. The final act of our strange drama played out in their living room once more. As I handed over the deed, my father cleared his throat. We're proud of you, Marcus. The words I'd waited a lifetime to hear. They landed softly, their impact dulled by time and perspective. My hands shook, barely holding together, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down, suffocating. Thank you, I replied, not because their pride defined me anymore, but because I recognized the effort it took to offer it. I walked out of my childhood home for what might be the last time, not victorious, not defeated, simply free. Lot 49 continues to thrive. The scholarship fund grows yearly. I've started dating someone who sees me clearly without the distortion of family history. And that parking lot, still there, transformed but recognizable, a reminder of where I started and how far I've come. Sometimes the least valuable things teach the most valuable lessons. Sometimes being overlooked is the greatest gift. It forces you to see yourself, to define your own worth. In the end, the space they gave me as an insult became the foundation for everything. Not just a business, a life, my life, on my terms, and that's worth more than any beachfront property could ever be.